and welcome to episode 7 of Life in the Punkdemic. So, you might have noticed that I didn't do one yesterday. It's just a little bit too busy that day. I'm still going to aim for roughly one a day, but especially during the week, I'm trying to work Monday to Friday at the moment with college work. So, every now and then I might end up skipping one during the week, but you probably don't care that much. So, what's been going on? Well, I went from the last day that I did one was definitely my hardest day to date with the coronavirus lockdown stuff. So it was a couple different small things, but mostly just like not getting proper sleep. Not getting in exercise that day just from feeling bad, and I think I didn't exercise the day before, which piles on top of each other, so I was in a little bit of a rough spot, for sure. But then come the next day, I was pretty good again, pretty good, for sure. I was able to get a good chunk of work done for college work. Was able to get another run. Overall, pretty successful day, and back to good again. I think I'm definitely adjusting pretty well to this new life or whatever this is. I think I'm doing pretty well. So I'm, as always, organizing to hang out with people over the beauty of the internet. I got to watch a film with my dad last night, along with a friend of mine. So that was a lot of fun. So it's good. It's good. You like that ASMR clicking of me opening this bottle? Delicious. Okay, so what's been going on? Well, not much has been going on. So I wanted to do a more in-depth one the last day, but I didn't. Like I said, it was probably the hardest day for me, so it was hard for me to get up the willpower to do anything other than just do a couple songs and put them up. So this time around, I'm going to go in a bit more depth. What I'm going to do this episode on is something that's very close to me. It's something that I've definitely struggled a lot with, and still do to a certain degree. So it's the topic that more often than anything I have tried to write about, put out a blog on. I think I've written 3 or 4 different articles on it and put out none of them. One of them even caused me to spiral for a little bit, and went through a difficult period from that. Not necessarily because of what I'm about to talk about, so much as it was a spark to some other things. But yeah, so essentially it is body dysmorphia, which is something that I mentioned in my original song that I played a bit back. So it's essentially having and I'm sure everyone knows what it is at this point, but just throw it out there. It's the having a warped perception of your own body, essentially. So you think it looks a different way from what it actually does. This can take a couple different forms. In my case, it's about weight, where to me, I've had body dysmorphia for quite a while, where I consider myself to be fat, which is a loaded term, so I'm not using that phrase lightly, but that's just the way that I see it, or have seen it at least. So I see myself as being a lot bigger, a lot heavier than I in reality am. So this is something that I've had since I was pretty young, like with a lot of these things. The way that it originally manifested, well, I guess we'll take one further step back before that, is that I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when I was 4 years old, and before the point that I was properly diagnosed, I was essentially wasting away. I was malnourished. I couldn't, any kind of like food that I was eating was just passing straight through me. And I ended up naturally adapting by only wanting to eat like mashed potatoes with some gravy, because at least I could kind of get most of that. And I just couldn't handle any other kinds of foods at the time. So I was just like getting skinnier and skinnier, and like my parents understandably were getting very worried for my health. So they went around quite a few different places to try and figure out what was wrong with me. And after a couple of doctors, I believe, eventually one looked at me and went, "Wait a minute, you might have cystic fibrosis." So they sent off the tests, yada yada, and yeah, I did. So from there, I was able to be put on proper medication, and so I was able to eat food properly again. So with this in mind, was I a little bit overweight, or like, yeah, a bit, was I overweight when I was a young kid? Yeah, I'd say so. I don't even think that's like a warped view. It's understandable that I ended up that way because like my parents wanted to protect me, obviously. And after seeing me almost waste away, they maybe went slightly too much on the other side, where food became kind of a worry for them, where if I wasn't eating, that was like terrifying to them. So they made sure that I was always fed, which is good, but it meant that as a byproduct, I put on a bit of weight. Again, nothing catastrophic, like I was never gigantic or anything, but I was had a little bit more weight to me than most people. So the way that the body dysmorphia stuff came in is essentially, the way that I see it and remember it is, if one person calls you fat, it hurts, but it doesn't do that much to you, because you go, oh, that guy could just be an asshole. You know, he's just saying shit to try and make me feel bad. But then if one more person says it to you, unrelated to that person, then that's it. In my mind, at least, I'm fat. And I now had this label and this role that I was stuck with for the rest of a good while. So this happened like playground kind of shit. So this is when I was really quite young, and I then kind of learned the realities of how to live as, at least in my mind, the fat kid, and it was hard too, because a lot of the perception that I was given from media and from other people and things like this was that people don't like fat people. There's a lot of like negative stereotypes connected with people who are a bit overweight, and these are all things that I accepted, and I then just tried to work around, rather than directly dispel any of them, or try to work against my beliefs in those things. So essentially, since by default, in my mind, I was working I was fighting an uphill battle with friendships to try and make people like me. And like I discussed on the last thing, that was something that was very important to me. So in my mind, I even distinctly remember when I was like 9 or 10, thinking to myself, like, why would people be friends with a fat person? And I was almost confused, and I lost and barely understood why people were friends with me, and that is rough. And it definitely served as an undertone to some of my relationships and my relationship patterns. Was this fear of abandonment from this mostly. So it was tough. And then once I hit secondary school, hit puberty, I lost like a good chunk of weight, to the point where people would even be like, wow, holy shit. If they didn't see me for a while, they'd be like, Jesus, puberty hit you hard. Like I grew pretty tall. I'm about 6 foot. I didn't lose weight so much as, converted into height instead of length, or length instead of width. Yeah. So, but even with my actual body shape changing, that's the thing about dysmorphia is the mental body shape that I had, the one that I perceived myself as having, was still the one that I had as a kid. And it was still the one that I perceived other people as seeing me that way. It's not just me. It's a built-in belief that that's how other people see me. So the first time that I kind of fully I did acknowledge it, and I was like aware of it, but I wasn't aware of it as a dysmorphia. I was aware of it as I'm fat, and this is a difficult thing for me. So the point where I realized it as maybe I'm not right about this was when I first went into counseling, which happened in sixth year in secondary school, where I went there for depression related to the Leaving Cert, as a lot of people do, and anxiety. But I've covered a lot of those things, so I'll leave those. But one of the things that I brought up was my weight, because obviously it was an issue to me. And the counselor at the time was like in disbelief that I believed I was fat, or not in disbelief that I believed that, but in disbelief that I could believe that. And they told me like to go into any clothes store and try on medium-sized clothes, which is an average build, and you'll find that they fit you. And they were right. And that is like, I don't know if it's a universally good way to go about things, because there's times where, I put on a little bit of weight, and then some of the things that used to fit me aren't able to fit me, and things that are medium don't fit me, and I have to switch to large on some things. And so I don't think that that's like a piece of advice that I would give in general. It's one that helped me, at least at the time. So, but I realize now there's nuance to it, and it was more a specific thing. So anyway, that was my first kind of foray into looking at it. And then once I get to college, I kind of tried to push it away again and try to just not deal with it. Or, as in a lot of cases, I at times dealt with it by losing weight, which I'm pretty efficient at doing, and I don't go too far usually, or really at all. Like, I don't have, even though I have body dysmorphia, I don't have eating disorder or anything along those lines, even when I am trying to lose weight. And I think partly this is because of cystic fibrosis, and knowing I need to take care of myself means that I do make sure that I eat like proper meals every day. So that isn't so much an issue to me as just like my perception of myself. And it's like I lost another like decent bit of weight, and I was then in the second year of college, I think, and I realized like while I felt a bit better, I still wasn't going away, and this is one of the ones that never really fully went away, and I'm not going to, or I'll skip forward to where I am now, where this is, and it's why I've tried to write it so many times, and it's why I've never ended up putting out anything on it yet, is that for me, I usually try to write about things that I have already overcome. That, and overcome is maybe too strong a word in some cases, but at the least that I feel in control of, that I feel I made significant strides from my own work in that area. And in this case, yeah, things have improved on this front, but nothing directly. And there's a couple things that I want to bring up about my experiences with it. So the first is that specifically my experience of having body dysmorphia as a dude, as a male. So almost all the resources available online related to body dysmorphia are specifically tailored to girls, to women. And there is almost nothing I can find on the male side of it. I don't know the numbers in terms of like how prevalent or common it is for men. I do know I've met some people who had it and were men, so it's clearly exists. I mean, I exist, so it exists, but it's kind of more difficult to, I'm not going to say it's more difficult to navigate because of it, but it's harder to find good resources. Because obviously it's definitely more common in women because of societal expectations, among a lot of other difficult things that dudes don't have to deal with to the same degree, for sure. But I also think there's most likely an underrepresentation of dudes just being willing to talk about it. I think it's possibly because of it's less common, possibly just dudes being less inclined to self-disclosure on things like this. I think there's definitely a shame element in there, and there's definitely a strong shame element in there for myself. But at this point in my life, I'm comfortable with everything that I've got and comfortable with people knowing about everything I've got. There's nothing that, or almost nothing. Everyone's got their secrets. But for the most part, there is nothing that I don't feel comfortable talking about in terms of like my personal makeup. So yeah, with this one, it's still tough to talk about. So this is one that is still there for me, and it's improved over time, but I've never been able to directly improve it, which is unusual. And if you've read my blogs and things, you probably realize that I am very proactive when it comes to mental health issues. But in this case, there was, even though I tried and, I was able to find some more kind of gender neutral resources, and I looked into research papers on what is effective in terms of treatment, and none of it really clicked with me. None of it made sense. And while I have brought it up in my own counseling before, we never really made that much progress on it. It was usually kind of looked at through the lens of other things. And that is where I've made improvements on it, is just through improving my general makeup as a whole. It's kind of as a byproduct of the things that it was negatively like linked with. By helping those things, I was then able to ease the burden of this a little bit. But it's still there. It's just not as strong. And it's still something that I deal with every time I look in a mirror. Every time that I see a picture of myself every time I look down. Even if I'm like a fully, like my body BMI chart puts me at average or normal, it still doesn't feel fully right to me. I never felt fully comfortable in my body in general. I'm kind of getting more used to it over time and through acceptance of a lot of different things. I appreciate my eccentricities in terms of how I look and how I work, but it's an ongoing process, and it's something that maybe at some point I'll try to directly work with. But for the moment, simply the act of talking about this and putting it out is already like a pretty big step forward for me. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's that much else I can talk about with it. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I will most likely return to this subject at some point, maybe when I have a bit more clarity on it, or I've made strides or found ways to make strides. But for the moment, I will leave it here. And now for that good old-fashioned rootin' tootin' music. This one is Redondo Beach by Patti Smith. 1 second. Okay. Late afternoon, dreaming hotel, just had the quarrel, send you away, when looking for you, are you gone, to know, another dimension, well, she never returned. Oh, you know what I mean. We're looking for you. Are you gone? Down by the ocean, it was so dismal. I was just standing with shotgun. Women all standing with shotgun faces. A bad description. Oh, I was looking for you. Everyone was singing. Girl was washed on Redondo Beach, and everyone was so sad. She was smart. I went looking for you. Are you gone? Down by the ocean, it was so dismal. Women all standing with shotgun their faces. Sad description. Oh, I was looking for you. Esther told me was washed up on Redondo Beach, smiling angel with apple blonde hair now. I went looking for you. Are you gone? Picked up my key, didn't reply. Went to my room and started to cry. You were smiling angel. Are you gone? Down by the ocean, it was so dismal. I was just standing with shock on my face. Hers put away, the girl that died was you. Never returned into my arms, cause you were gone. Never returned into my arms, cause you were gone. Goodbye, Johnny. So, this next song is called Sinaloan Milk Snake Song, and it is by the Mountain Goats. So this comes from the Mountain Goats' debut album, Zopilote Machine. Not sure on the pronunciation on that. And it is a beautiful number. Usually has female backing vocals for the chorus, but I am not a woman. And I don't have any stashed around here or in my closet or anything, so it's going to be me by myself. Just before I start, Actually, the song is called Sinaloan Milk Snake Song, but I always get confused because on Spotify they have a typo there in the song name. There is a Sinaloan milk snake. There is no Sinaloan milk snake. So this is Sinaloan milk snake. The sun melts everything down, and the hills are reduced to nothing. Well, the whole house creaks, and you can tell that the coach is coming. So you lean down and you pick up the small soft eggs on the dust outside my door. I hold them in my hand. They are warm and the air is warming up now. I got a message for you. If I could only remember. I got a message for you. You're gonna have to come and get it now. La 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 la. La 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 la. Ever since I came home, all I can think about is water. Last night they brought the fat lemon from the bowl, and I couldn't bring myself to do anything about it. Remember California, yet I remember Malibu. I remember the names of the states and cities, but I don't remember you. No, I got a message for you. If I could only remember. I got a message for you. You're gonna have to come and get it now. I got a message for you. 2, 3, 4. Got a message for you. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Whoa oh 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 oh. La 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 la. Sorry for the vocal improvisations at the end there. There's a lot of them in the song, and there's 2 people singing, and I can't do all those. The next song I'm going to play is Hungry Dog on the Street by the Taxpayers. So the Taxpayers are occasionally classified as jazz punk. They are in the folk punk sphere for sure. And this song comes from the album God Forgive These Bastards, Songs from the Forgotten Life of Henry Turner, who is essentially a, as it turns out, fictional person, which this album serves as a sort of biopic of, where he started off as an all-time high school baseball champion. I don't know anything about baseball, if it's clear from my terminology, but he was very good at baseball. He hurt his wrist during a game and ended up homeless on the streets, as you do. So this song is along those lines. So this is Hungry Dog on the Street. So let's go. My brain, my fingers, pop bottles in a package place. Got caught up on a park bench. Everybody wanna get a taste when the sun goes down. I swear to God, they'll try to run you out of this town, and they will beat you down. They'll beat you down. You stay around, true to get shot down. They'll beat you down. They'll beat you down. Feel like a hungry dog on the street on a very short leash. My blood has a cancer. Radiation wouldn't help a thing. My God doesn't answer. I pray nightly every single week when the liquor runs low. My threads run low. Got nowhere to go, nowhere to go. No religion could ever save my soul. Nowhere to go, nowhere to go. Feel like a hungry dog on the street on a very short leash. So, this last mini-song is called The Michael Jordan of Drunk Driving by AJJ from my favorite album of theirs, Ninth Man, which is also one of my favorite albums of all time, I'd say. Okay. The Michael Jordan of Drunk Driving played his final game tonight. And burdened by his loneliness, he wanted to feel alive. His laziness took the pyramids, and the solitude was a knife. The Michael Jordan of drunk driving played his final game tonight. Good luck, everyone.